We're going to turn now to the crisis in the Middle East, and tensions continue to build here, at home, and overseas after the news of the deaths of 6 hostages in Gaza. Today, the funeral was held for American-Israeli hostage Hersh Goldberg Poland. Israeli President Isaac Herzog spoke at the funeral and asked the family for forgiveness for failing to bring him home alive. Protests today in Israel and in New York City over the killings in Israel. Protesters broke through barriers near the home of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and protesters clashed here in Union Square. Eyewitness News reporter Jim Dolan is in the newsroom with the very latest. Jim.
Liz, Israelis today at once mourning the loss of 6 of their own and seething with anger that their own government didn't do more to protect them, took to the streets. They demanded the government reach a deal with Hamas, securing the release of the remaining hostages, and accusing the prime minister of sacrificing Israeli lives for his own ambitions. In Israel, families began to bury the dead today. The bodies of 6 hostages killed last week by Hamas militants were returned to their families as a nation both grieves and rises up against its government. Protesters demanded the Israeli government make a deal with the terrorist group Hamas for the release of the remaining hostages today. They blame the ambitions of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on the failure to reach a deal.
There's one person who wants to sit on this chair, and he's willing to sacrifice everything. This country, these people, our freedom, our values, he's willing to sacrifice everything so that he can remain on his chair.
We want a deal. We want the hostages home. But as an American, I'm looking to strong leadership around the world. I'm looking to Biden. I'm looking to all the countries that are sitting at the table to be bigger leaders than they have been in the last 11 months.
But Netanyahu scoffed at the protesters, saying now is the worst possible time for compromise.
They murdered 6 of our hostages in cold blood. So after this horrible murder, I can't believe that any serious person will come and say, now compromise more.
Meanwhile, in Gaza, the war is in a bit of a pause as aid workers try and beat back a rise in cases of polio that threatens children there, providing vaccinations that some parents had been reluctant to get.
It's very promising that already we have heard interest from parents who have come from Khan Yunis, who have come from the southern area, and are asking our staff there and asking our teams, when is the vaccination going to be available for us? When can we take our children?
And in Washington, asked if he thought Netanyahu was doing enough to reach a deal with Hamas, President Biden was brief.
No.
Netanyahu today repeated his promise that the war in Gaza will end only with what he calls the complete destruction of Hamas, something most observers say is impossible to achieve militarily. Hamas, as if to prove it is as barbaric as Netanyahu claims, is now releasing videos made by some of the hostages found dead last week, made under duress and while they were held captive. In the videos, the hostages, reading from a script, are calling for a ceasefire. Liz?